We'll be continuing with the previous topic of comprehension that we were doing. After discussing the theoretical part of the reading techniques and what do you mean by comprehension, today we'll take up some passages. And I would like to point out that it is not only about reading the passage, okay, it is also about analyzing. Okay, so when the passage is in front of you, uh, we can understand what is it talking about. Okay, even if we try to skim read, okay, that is a technique. Now much would depend on the kind of passage that is there. Where do we require skimming, or where do we require uh, you know that scanning kind of thing, or where do we need to read it intensively. Okay, so even if we skim read this passage, for example, so we would find that what analysis can we make out of it? How do we analyze it? We come to know that it talks about something about the Ramayana, okay, and it says that it is a shorter version. It's shorter than what Mahabharata was, okay, and then it further describes that where is, I mean, how the Ramayana was, how the about the setting of the Ramayana, that the scene was set in the middle Ganges, in the Vindhyan forests, and the original version is, it is attributed to the poet Valmiki. So, even without reading it word by word, just through skimming, you get an idea about the passage, what it is talking about. So, what do we find here? Alongside, we will keep on analyzing rather than reading it word to word. I mean, you have the option of reading it word by word, but we also will do some analysis of it. Okay. So, what do we find? That the passage, it talks about uh, Ramayana, it talks about the original version of it, and it also talks about the settings, that where was it set. Okay. Then it also mentions that it was the first literary composition, and the original version, when this does it date back to. Okay. After this, what we can focus it, that on the storyline of the Ramayana, of course, which we all are aware of, but this passage, it mentions about the conflict that takes place between Ram and Ravan, and probably it reflects a detailed version of the local conflicts. So basically, now here comes the analysis part, that this text, it is not only talking about the conflict or the dispute between Ram and Ravan, it is also reflecting certain other things like the local conflicts, okay, that used to occur between expanding kingdoms, okay, in that Gangetic plain and the tribes of those regions. So we are also talking about the kingdoms that were expanding and the conflicts that they used to have with the tribes of that region. Okay, so this passage gives examples of the kingdom of Kaushala, which represents the newly emerging monarchies. Okay, and it is a contrast to the society of the Rakshasas or the forest tribes. So the Rakshas have been compared with the forest tribes, who were actually, they were like demons, or they were demonized because their pattern of life or the way they used to lead their lives, okay, they were different from the normal people, or you can say from the monarchies, or you can say that they were like savages. Fine. So the transference of events, uh, it is said in this passage that it is more towards southerly location. It may have been the work of a later period, okay, and it reflects on expanded geography. Means how that area may have widened, that geography or that geographical region may have widened later on, and it was possibly also the case in the depiction of Lanka itself as a city of immense wealth. Perhaps that is also a part of the expanded geography. Now, this is what the passage talks about. It talks about, it starts with uh, the writing of the Ramayana, the early Sanskrit literature. It talks about, now when we analyze it, okay, it talks about the original version, and it is attributed to Valmiki. Then it talks about the kingdom of Kaushala. Okay, so this kingdom of Kaushala, it represents the emerging kingdoms at that point of time, and it is also representing a contrast with the society of the forest tribes or the tribals, what you can call it as the Rakshasas at that point of time. Okay, so this is what the passage focuses on. Now, I'm sure you must all have, uh, skimmed through the passage. Now, let us take up the question that is there. Okay, that what, according to the text, was not originally written by Valmiki and was added later. Okay, now we can focus on the options that are there. Okay, now if we follow the first answer, now when we are solving a comprehension passage, we also at times follow different techniques. Not only the techniques of reading the passage, but also of eliminating the wrong answers. Okay, at times we have to look at all the probabilities, but then uh, keeping the passage in mind, what can we see here? Does the passage anywhere talk about the duties of an ideal king? No. So this option automatically gets eliminated. Okay. So this is the rule of elimination that at times, we follow when we are solving a comprehension passage. So when we discuss these things later, when we move on with different passages, we will perhaps adopt different techniques of arriving at the right answer. Fine. Then let's look at the second point, the conflict between advancing monarchies and tribal societies. Okay, now as per the question, okay, does it talk that there was some conflict between advancing monarchies and tribal societies? Was it not originally written by Valmiki? Okay, or was it added later? Again, the answer is no. Or does it talk about the admirable qualities of the foreign tribes? We don't find any such, mention in this passage. So we finally arrive at the right answer, that is none of the above. Okay, then let's take up the next question from the same passage. And it says that the forest tribes are described as Rakshasas because of their what? Language, which was not understood by their enemies. Again, following the rule of elimination. Do we find any such mention in this passage? No, we do not find any such mention about the language issue prevailing at that point of time. There must have been, but then that is something which is not mentioned in the passage. Okay, then totally different way of life. Perhaps this could be an option, but we also need to work on the other options that are available. We need to go through them as well, and then we can finally arrive at the other ones. So this answer, the second option, it appears to be a bit likely that this could be the probable answer to it. Let's look at the third option. Their strange eating habits. Okay, again, when we scroll through the passage or when you skim read the passage, you wouldn't have found anything mentioning about the eating habits of the Rakshasas. Okay, then taking the fourth option, the lack of manners and education. Now, this is also something which has not been specifically or clearly mentioned in the passage. So, where do we find the answer? Coming back to the passage, okay, we see that it mentions over here because of their pattern of life was different from that of the monarchies. Okay, so we can focus on this line over here when we are looking for the second, when looking for the answer to the second question. So this answer matches with the option that we are looking for. Okay. So coming back to the question, okay, we find that totally वहीं से कंटिन्यू करना है या शुरू से शुरू करना है वहीं से continue? So what do we find here? That we have the second option as the right answer, which is totally different way of life of the Rakshasas, because the passage mentions about it. Fine. Then after this, we come to the next passage. So I'm sure the first passage was easy to grasp from the point of view of understanding and also arriving at the right answers. So now let's take up this passage. Okay. Now, again, following the technique of skim reading, what do we see? Okay, that alongside when we make an analysis, I'll just make an analysis of the same. In the meantime, you can skim through the passage. What does it talk about? It talks about the Industrial Revolution, okay, that took place between the 18th and the 19th centuries, okay, and how that was a period from where the society shifted from the agrarian side. Agrarian means from the side of agriculture as a profession towards industrialization, and how the European societies, we find a shift of these societies towards industrialization both in Europe and America. Okay, so this passage, what does it mention? It says that prior to the Industrial Revolution, which began in Britain in such and such time, now how manufacturing was done or how things were manufactured, they were done at the rural level. Okay, now at people's homes using basic tools, some basic machines, okay, or some sort of handmade tools were used to manufacture those products. Now, as and when the society moved towards industrialization, this passage says that it marks a shift to powered special purpose machinery. Means as and as industrialization advanced, we found, what do we find? That there were special made machineries for the purpose depending on the kind of a job that is to be done. Then factories were established and the production, okay, it expanded. There was mass production at that point of time. It further mentions about the iron and textile industries, that how as these industries developed, or these industries as they started rising, what happened? Development alongside started rising. Now with the help of this, what happened? There was a talk about the steam engine. It talks about the Industrial Revolution, that how the development of the steam engine, it improved the transportation system, the system of communication, and the banking system. So while industrialization, it brought about an increased volume and variety of manufactured goods. Okay, now it makes an analysis that where on one side we find that what all it brought along with it, there were also some drawbacks which this passage highlights. Okay, so this passage says that with the advent of industrialization, on one side, we find that there was a variety of goods available to the people. Then there was an improved standard of living for some, but it also resulted in grim employment, okay, and living conditions. Means because people were not, you know, uh, prepared for this kind of concept, because they all belong to the rural and agrarian backgrounds. So for them, that was something new. So employment at that point of time, especially for the poor and the working class, became a problem. Okay. Now, before the advent of the Industrial Revolution, most people resided in small rural communities where their daily existences revolve around farming. So it towards the conclusion, it mentions that before industrialization came into the scene, what was the thing like? What was the scenario? That people used to reside in rural communities, small houses, and their livelihood, okay, it revolved around farming, around agriculture, basically. So the passage, it talks about industrialization, when it did start, what all developments it brought, but it also mentions at one place as to how, what was the drawback that was a result. Because whenever some sort of development takes place, it is understandable that anything that when it is explored or invented, it also brings along some drawbacks. So similar things were found with the poor and working class as well when uh, industrialization took over in Europe. Now, having analyzed the passage, let us take a look at the question. Now, which of the following is the opposite of predominant? Now, let us adopt the scanning technique and search for this word predominant somewhere in the passage. Okay. So where do we find, if we have to use a scanning technique, we find it over here. Now, so when we are applying that scanning technique of reading, we are searching for the word predominant. So we are not concerned with what else is written there, because we are more focused on searching a particular word, that where this word has been used in the passage. Okay. Now, how do we arrive at the meaning of this word? That what does this word mean? Because even for looking for the antonym or the opposite of this word, we need to know the meaning, the probable meanings or the nearest meanings of this word, so that we can form an idea about uh, the antonym also. Because it is understandable, it is obvious that all the words that we may come across the passage, the meanings may not be clear to us. But it is only by reading it once or twice we have to get an idea as to what does this particular word mean. Okay. So when you look over here, we find that what it says, which took place now, it talks about industrial revolution, which was a period during which the society was basically or predominantly agrarian. Means prior to the advent of industrial revolution, the society over there in Europe was agrarian. Means it was an agricultural kind of society. That kind of society, the rural society, that was the period before this revolution took place. So predominantly means mainly. It was an agricultural based society, right? Now, when we look at the options, the word predominantly means, now pre means prior or before. We can break up this word, and dominant means something that is strong or important or main. So, what was strong or what was main at that time? It was the agrarian society. Now, with the help of when we are able to arrive or get an idea about the word that is there, now we can work at the options. Now, which words do we find as similar to the word predominant, or something that was strong, or something that was primary or main? Okay, we find the word prime as important, as somewhat similar to the word predominant. Then, what about the word central? Like we say, what is the central idea of a particular passage, of a particular story? So central also means what is the main thing? Okay, what is the heart of a thing? What is the main thing that a story or any narrative or anything that is trying to be conveyed? So central also implies something that is important or something that is main. Okay, the word principle. Now, we all are aware of this word principle. Principal also means something. Now, when we talk of the principal of the school, we say that he is the head. Head again means something who is the main authority or major authority of a particular place. Or we say that this is the principal rule of this particular place, means the main rule that is to be followed. So, this word also works as a synonym of predominant. Okay. So what are we left with? Minor. So where on one side we find that all these three words, they are working as, they are somewhat similar in meaning to predominant, means something there that is main, that is important, that is strong. Okay. We find this word minor. Okay. Which goes against the meaning of this word predominant. So we say that this word minor is the right option over here, as it is opposite of this word predominant. Okay. Now let's take up another passage. Okay. Now I'm sure you would find this passage quite interesting when you go through it. Okay. It talks about the RTI Act, it talks about an RTI activist. It talks about an information that was sought through RTI by an activist. Okay, regarding Central Railways Catering Department. Okay, their purchase of certain food out items to stock their warehouse at several times the maximum retail price. Okay, now this information was revealed. Okay, and an RTI was sought on this by one of the activists whose name is Mr. Ajay Bose. Now, when this information was sought through RTI, the railway authorities, now we are analyzing the passage. Okay, you can read it alongside or skim read or whichever way you wish to. Okay, so the gist of this passage is that the railway authorities, they did not comply with the RTI application. They failed to share the required information regarding the purchase of food items. Okay, now when the activist Mr. Ajay Bose, he did not get any response from the department, he filed an first appeal. Now, the response to this appeal, what was revealed? Okay, what, what could we find? That each kg of Amul curd was purchased at an exorbitant price of rupees 9,720, okay, per kg. Now, you would really find this quite surprising, and I'm sure after reading this passage, you would like to go into the details of this as to what happened further, right? So, Mr. Bose, after learning this, he filed his query that the catering department was running at a huge loss. Perhaps this could be the reason, because they were buying things at such high prices, okay, that were far, far beyond the real price or the maximum price of a particular product. So here we find a kind of a narration by Mr. Bose. He says that I filed the application in July 2016, but didn't get a reply from the Central Railways. So it appeared they wanted to cover something up. Okay, I filed an appeal, and the appellate authority, it show caused the railways, asking them to provide details sought by me within 15 days. So once the Central Railway, it did not respond to this application, okay, he filed an appeal, and the appellate court, appellate authority, it issued a show cause notice to the railways, okay, to provide details within 15 days. But, now look at the irony over here. Despite this, there was no reply even after several months. That is what Mr. Bose, he told his newspaper, The Hindu. Okay, so you get an idea about what the passage is talking of. It is about an RTI activist. It is about an RTI and information that was sought through RTI application, and how the system worked, how there was no reply given by the Central Railway, and the activist had to file an appeal to get an answer to it. Fine. This is what the passage talks about. Now, let us take up this question. The phrase cover up means. Now, again, you have to do a bit of scanning to see where do you find this word cover up. Okay. So, for your convenience, I'll just mention it over here. Cover something up. Okay. So, we can scan, and I am sure you all must have found this easily, to cover something up. Now, looking at the sentence, what do we understand by this? Means they were trying to hide something, they were trying to cover something. When you look at the options of the meanings that are available for this place, for this word, okay, to conceal, conceal is similar to hiding, but even if we arrive at the right option, we still are supposed to look at the remaining options as well, because maybe any other option may be nearer in meaning to the word that has been asked for, that as per the question. So to conceal, okay, it means to hide something. We can, to cover up something, we can take this as an option, but let us also look at the other options available. To discover. Now, discovering something, that is something like exploring something or finding some information. Okay, This goes against the meaning of this word covering up or hiding. To dissolve means to merge something, like the way salt or sugar gets dissolved in water or whatever. Okay, so dissolving means merging. So even this word dissolve does not go anywhere near to the word cover up. Let's take a look at the last option, to disclose. Disclose again means to reveal something, to open up something. Okay, something that has been hidden, we are trying to reveal that. So this word disclose, it serves as an antonym to the word cover up. So this also does not agree with the meaning of cover up. So we come back to option 1 again, that the first option, to conceal, is the right answer to this question. Okay, now we'll take up some more passages, but prior to that, I would like to also mention that there are some different kinds of writings. Okay, that we need to focus on in a paragraph. Now, first of all, we need to know what is paragraph. Now, a paragraph is supposed to be a series of sentences. It's a group of sentences, that are actually arranged in a very organized manner, and they are coherent. Coherent means they are arranged in a sequence, in a logical manner, that all the sentences that are there in a paragraph, okay, they are connecting to each other and they all relate to a single topic. Fine. So that is what a paragraph is. So it's a group of sentences which relates to a single topic, but it is also organized. Okay, if we find sentences that are unorganized, perhaps the reader, as a reader, we will not be able to make out the meaning of the passage. So we will discuss more of this in detail later on. So what does this writing do? Paragraph. Now it may contain different kinds of informations. Okay, like it could be a series of examples. It could be some long illustration. It could also be some sort of narration. It could be a narrative, okay, like some stories being narrated to us, okay, or it could also be a description of something. So when we talk of the kinds of paragraph, when we look at this, one kind of writing we can say is a narrative writing or the narrative paragraph, as we discussed above, that this narrative paragraph, what it actually does. So whenever we find a kind of a story that is being narrated in a sequence, okay, say if any war is being narrated, or if we talk about our stories of Ramayana or the Mahabharata, okay, say at home we used to have earlier that tendency of stories being narrated to us, stories about freedom fighters or some some rulers who got a lot of fame, some good warriors. So there was a trend of, uh, those stories being narrated to children in the families. Okay, I'm not sure whether it is still done or not with the advent of so much of internet and media. But so, what does a narrative writing do? It tells a story in a sequential manner. Okay, that how the actions took place or what all happened, but in a sequence. Okay, so a narrative writing, it has a very clear beginning. Okay, it has the middle part, and then it also about an end of the story in the form of a paragraph. So a narrative paragraph, what does it do? It tells a story of certain events, and it also gives details that relate to the event being told. So the idea is that, be it any paragraph, it would only deal with one particular kind of a topic or one particular kind of idea, or it would relate with the details of one particular thing. Okay, there cannot be scattered kind of information talking about so many things, because a normal length of a paragraph, as we see, is around 100 to 150 or maybe at the most 200 words. Okay, so a lot of information, scattered information of different ideas, cannot be assimilated in a paragraph, and it should not be done in that manner. Okay, so let us take some example of narrative writing. It is like historical events, or maybe some sort of real or imaginary stories being narrated. Okay, whether we are listening to it or we are reading the same, whatever, in any form. So that is a narrative kind of writing. Okay, then we move to another type of writing in the form of a paragraph. We'll stay confined to paragraph because we are dealing with passages. So we have the descriptive paragraph. Now, as the word descriptive suggests, okay, it talks about something, it describes something basically, and it shows the reader what a thing or a person is like. Means it gives details about something or a person. It could be a place, it could be a person, anything. Okay, so it can talk about a person, it could talk about a place, it could talk about a particular idea or something, but it does that in a descriptive manner, in the form of a description. Okay, and all the details regarding that particular person, place, idea, whatever the topic, the passage is dealing with, okay, it describes it, and we find details that relate to that topic. Okay, so the words that are actually chosen when you are doing a descriptive kind of writing, or if you have read some descriptive writing earlier, you would notice that what a descriptive writing does. The purpose of a descriptive writing is to, you know, uh, attract our five senses, okay, of touch, smell, sight, sound, and taste. Say if someone is, describing that uh, maybe someone had a burger yesterday at Burger King. Okay, so the way the person is describing that, what kind of a burger it was, perhaps it would appeal to your sense of taste. Okay, and you can also imagine. So the idea is that whatever the description be, it touches the person's imagination. It, it allows the reader to imagine by using any of these five senses. Okay, so it is now, how are things described? They are described by the use of some adjectives. Okay, so what happens when a paragraph is written in a descriptive manner? Okay, it facilitates the readers to imagine the personality that is being discussed, or any object or any place. Say if you have been to a hill station and you are trying to describe the scenic beauty of that place. So what happens? By making use of some adjectives, when you are describing about that place, the reader, through his sense of sight, he can visualize. Through his imagination, he can visualize that, yes, this is how the scenery must have been, whatever you are describing. Okay, so the idea is to attract the reader's imagination. Okay, after this comes the expository paragraph. Okay, now when we talk of expository, you can relate with the explanation, that something is being explained. Okay, now this kind of a writing, this kind of a paragraph, it explains something. Okay, or it provides some sort of, maybe some instructions. Okay, it can also pass some information. It could explain something, or it can give directions, or also shows how things happen. So the basic idea of an expository paragraph is to explain or to give information about a particular topic, explain that topic, which, and that information may have been collected from different sources. Like it could be from any sort of books, some newspapers, some journals, or any other source of information that is there. Okay, so this type of paragraph, actually it requires a bit of research. So when you are researching on something, you would refer to different books or journals or newspaper articles to find out more about that topic which you wish to inform the readers about or explain them. Okay, so it is possible that at times the writer may also rely on his or her own knowledge and the expertise or experience while explaining a particular topic or a point. So that is what an expository kind of writing does. Okay. Now, say if you read any sort of scientific passage or any scientific journal, you would find information related to a particular topic of science or particular aspect of science mentioned in that passage. So where the writer is trying to give the reader some information and alongside also trying to offer explanation. Okay, based on some sources from different sources. Then we will also have a look at this persuasive kind of writing. At times, it has also been addressed as a paragraph of argument or an argumentative kind of writing. Okay. And this type of paragraph, it tries to get the reader to, to accept a particular point of view or understand the writer's position. Means it tries to persuade the reader. Okay. It tries to convince the reader about a particular viewpoint. Okay. That is what the writer tries to do when he is writing something, trying to persuade the reader, trying to make the reader convince or believe that yes, this is what the fact is, or this is something that stands true. Okay. So at times this kind of a paragraph is, you know, it is also said to be an argumentative paragraph because you are arguing on a certain point, you are offering support to a particular information or a particular viewpoint that you hold. Okay, through some examples, through some researches, through some databases, and so on. Okay, so this kind of paragraph is also referred to as argumentative paragraph, where the topic sentence. Now, what is a topic sentence? It is basically the first line of a sentence which gives the reader an idea about what the paragraph is going to discuss further. Okay, so it's like a like an introductory, it gives the central idea of the passage. So that is what we call the topic sentence. So in a paragraph of argument or in any persuasive writing or a persuasive paragraph, what happens? We find that the topic sentence, it takes a particular request or it takes a specific position and with the aim of convincing the reader on something. Okay. So the details of a persuasive paragraph, now they are written to prove why the argument is valid. Okay. At times, this kind of a paragraph, it also carries, now the writer here, smart writers, they also try to capture the prospective reader's mind or the prospective questions that may be coming in the mind of the readers when reading your point, your viewpoint. So what may happen? So such smart writers, they also, you know, offer some sort of counter arguments. They offer some sort of counter arguments. Okay, and then again they come back to their own position to, to state that whatever they are trying to persuade or that their point is valid. So when you are through some counter argument or through answering some prospective questions that may have arisen in the mind of the readers, what happens? The reader generally tends to get convinced. So this is another kind of writing that we can talk about. So I think now we have one paragraph over here, one passage that I feel we can, you know, uh, discuss today alongside. Now, when you are skimming this passage, I suppose you are skimming, or if you are reading this passage, whatever manner, whatever technique you are applying, okay, also focus on uh, the structure of the passage. At many places you would find the use of some figures of speech. We'll take that topic of figures of speech in subsequent classes. Okay, like look at this: the village cradled by the arms of nature. Okay, by the arms of nature. Now we find a figure of speech over here. We find personification over here. Similarly, you would find, uh, you know, many such uses of figures of speech in this passage. Okay, so what you have to focus in this particular passage is also the structure, the grammatical structure, also how the sentences have been formed, the semantic structure. You'll have to focus on different things. So you would find that this passage is a bit different from the earlier ones that we had discussed. So when you have a look at this passage, what you would find that the writer, the author of this passage, okay, now he is talking about uh, a tree. Okay, he talks about a village that is forgotten. Perhaps when we analyze the passage, we get an idea that the writer is talking about a village that is quite old, or maybe the writer used to live at this place in that village, which is now forgotten because perhaps the writer has shifted to an urban area. He must have spent his childhood in that village, and the writer is quite old. Okay, so he's talking of something called forgotten village. So this word forgotten village, this phrase, it gives an idea that writer is talking of something that is quite old, okay, in existence. So what is he talking about? What is he referring to? Okay, he says that this village cradled by arms of nature means the village, the environment of the village, it was full of greenery. Nature could be seen, nature could be experienced there in that village. Greenery, it also holds a lot of stories that were untold. Also, there are a lot of secrets about that village which the writer perhaps knows. And again, we find rustling leaves and whispered in the hushing winds, the use of different figures of speech from time to time in the first paragraph of this passage, in the first part of this passage. Okay. Now here we also find that he talks about a grand oak. Okay. He talks about a grand oak tree. Now look at the way he is describing this tree. He says that it was like an elderly figure in the village. Okay, so again, a use of figures of speech over here. Okay, that how that tree has been, look at this, sheltering generations means protecting generations. Okay, means providing that natural beauty, providing the providing that sense of nature, that sense of greenery, and also a lot of tales and echoes of laughter under that tree. Perhaps that people who used to enjoy the shades of that tree, perhaps the ways they may have been enjoying the shade of that tree, it also mentions about it. Okay, so we also find with the use of figures of speech, we also find something quite descriptive about this passage, the first part of the passage. Now, moving ahead, look at the second part of this passage. Okay, it straight away talks about the oak tree, that it was the keeper. It was the keeper of the village's soul. Means guard. It was guarding the village. In what sense? Now it is a tree, not a person. Again, the use of a figure of speech here, that how that tree, it was protecting the villagers. Okay, bearing witness to the ebb and flow of life, that how at that point of time, the time that the author is referring to, that how lives have grown, uh, you know, uh, in the presence of that tree, how innocent children were playing, they used to play under that tree, and how under the shade of that tree, how they have grown up to become adults and also aged. So you find its barks rugged and wise. So we find a description basically of the tree over here with the use of figures of speech. Okay, so it's a testament to the resilience against time's relentless tide. So means a testament means it's like a proof. Okay, that about resilience against means a kind of a protest against time's relentless tide, means that oak tree still stands there, and how, like it says that time and tide waits for none. Similarly, how time has flown by, but the tree has still been standing there opposing, okay, the time, because the tree is still there. It has not gone anywhere. Okay. Then further, In the next section of this passage, we find the writer talking about how the seasons have changed and bringing forth the dance of life and decay. Okay, the oak remained steadfast, a silent spectator. So we find, what do we find? How, with the help of figures of speech, the writer has tried to describe and praise this tree that has been existing here. Okay, for so many years. Okay, that it remains steadfast, a silent spectator to the cycle of existence. Now, what does that mean? That life has been coming and growing, means uh, children have been born there and then they have grown old, some have left that place, and that cycle of people coming and going, and the life, it talks about the cycle of life that has been existing. And this tree is still there to witness all that cycle, life of cycle, okay, that is existing. So it talks about an aura of mystic and timelessness, a beacon for those who sought solace in its presence. Okay, that how it also reminds people, okay, who used to find that solace, that peace under the presence of that tree, okay, under the shade of that tree. So this village, from the march of modernity harbored a harmony between man and nature. So the author says that this village, okay, in spite of modernization, it has tried to develop a sense of harmony between man and nature, so that man, even if a man develops through uh, technology, industrialization, whatever, but still, this village has been an example through this oak tree that a harmony between man and nature exists. Okay. And it talks about a symphony of living traditions under the watchful eyes of the ancient sky. Again, if you focus on this word watchful eyes, you would find figure of speech and its grand sentinel, the oak. So the focus lies on a village, okay, and especially on the oak tree that exists in that village. Now we'll quickly have a glance at the questions that are there. Now the first question is, which word is an antonym of steadfast as used in the context of this passage? Okay, so first of all, let's look for this word steadfast. We find it over here, the scanning technique. Then, which word does not relate to the word steadfast? So we need to know the meaning of steadfast. So say, what if we are not aware of the meaning of this word steadfast? Okay, so with the sentence, we can form an idea. The way the sentence has been presented or the information has been presented, it says that as seasons changed, bringing forth the dance of life and decay, the oak remained steadfast. Means it remained there strongly. Okay, it did not move. With the change of seasons, it did not fell down. Okay, its roots did not, decay. The tree did not decay in any manner. It has remained there strongly with years to come. Okay, and it has silently been witnessing the cycle of existence. So when we read the sentence, perhaps we can make out that this is something that has been existing. And what exists? Something that is strong, that exists for a long period of time. So from this word, from the use of this word in the sentence, we can make out that this is something that is strong enough. Okay, so that is something about steadfast. Now, when we look at the options that are given here, we find the words like unyielding. Okay, I'll just quickly move on with this. Words like resilient, okay, or words like tenacious, they all relate with the word steadfast. Means unyielding means that something that you are not yielding or you are not surrendering to something. It is again something like strong. Resilience means again offering some opposition with your strength. Okay. The word tenacious also similarly relates to the word steadfast. Okay, that it is standing strong. So wavering is the word that serves as an antonym. Wavering means that something that can move, or it has wavered, it has shifted its position. Okay, so wavering is the word over here which works as an antonym of steadfast in this context. Now look at the second question. The depiction of the grand oak in the passage primarily serves to do what? Okay, the way this oak tree has been shown in this passage, what is the purpose of it? That what does this tree do? It symbolizes the transient nature of human existence. Does it indicate the underlying socio-political unrest in the village? Do we anywhere do we find this uh, question of socio-political unrest? We do not find a mention of any such information in the passage. Okay, then does it illustrate the symbiotic relationship between mankind and nature? Probably yes. Okay, then, but we cannot ignore the other options as well till we read them. Highlight the encroachment of modernity and traditional ways of life. Okay, so it does not show anywhere, this passage does not depict any such encroachment of modernity. It does talk about modernity, but it does not show that how this modernity has overtaken nature. It does not talk about that. So this option can also be ignored. So we can say that illustrating the symbiotic relationship between mankind and nature. This is where this passage focuses upon in the context of this question, the depiction of the grand oak, that what purpose does it primarily serve? So we have 3 as the right answer. Then we'll just take 2 more questions on this. This passage, in the passage depicting the village overshadowed by an ancient oak, the narrative voice can be best described as. Now, is the author trying to explain something over here? Is he trying to describe? Is it a descriptive kind of writing? Is he trying to persuade on something? Or is he trying to offer an argument on something? So I hope reading this question, you all must have arrived at the right answer, that this passage is descriptive in nature. It has been describing about the oak tree. It has been describing the village. Okay. And the second and third passages have talked in detail about the oak tree, that the kind of tree it has been, how strong it has been, how old it has been, and how it has been witnessing. So the entire focus in the passage lies on that oak tree. The way, so when the author is explaining things in the passage, we have been able to form an image in our minds that how that tree must have been, how ancient, kitna bada wo raha hoga, okay, and so on. So we find that this passage is more of descriptive rather than the other options that are mentioned here. So now moving to the last question, what tone does the author predominantly employ in the passage? Do you find any cynical kind of tone? Do you find a nostalgia? Do you find some satire kind of a thing, or something clinical? So obviously the author, who perhaps may not be living in that village now, who has shifted to some urban area, or who has, maybe he has spent his childhood in that village under that oak tree. Now it's a reminiscence of him. He is reminded of those days. And when he is reminded of those days, when you are reminded of something, then there is some sort of nostalgia that exists. So the right answer to this would be nostalgic. Okay, so we'll end the session for here today. Okay, and see you with something new next time. Have a good day. Thank you.